My name is Cheryl Lugin. I'm the author of Madness on the Brink of Eco-Apocalypse, that book up there, which I wrote because I was mad that we aren't doing more about the many threats to Earth's life support systems. But on one hand, I get it. Figuring out what to do on your own is hard and isolating. So I looked around to find groups and organizations who are already doing something. And in this video series, we are finding out what they are up to inspire the rest of us to do more, because we sure can't wait for our government, the megacorps, or the oligarchs to do it for us. We're here to save ourselves. Today we are chatting with Ruth Holton-Hodson. She has spent her 30-year career as a consumer advocate in the nonprofit, philanthropic, and government sectors, but she's here today to chat with us as a board member of the Solar Cookers International organization, which I do showcase in the book. Welcome, Ruth.
Well, thank you. We're just delighted to be here and to be able to share some good news
Yes.
about things that are happening around the world.
Well, our first question here is always to touch a little bit of grass, so to speak. If we could look outside past that wall behind you, what would we see out there nature-wise?
Nature-wise, I have my garden is exploding at the moment. You would see yellow irises and red and blue sage and a bright purple bougainvillea that's just starting.
Oh, that's nice. Well, outside here, I've got a few things blooming too, including a lot of weeds that we didn't get much rain over the winter, but when we got it, it brings out all the weeds. So that's my weekend project. But
Well, weeds are only plants that are in the wrong place.
right, exactly. All right. Thank you for that. Let's see, what else have we got? So tell us, how did you get started with Solar Cookers International? What is it, and how did it get started?
And how did it get started?
Mm.
So I got started with Solar Cooker International because I wanted to do something that benefited women, and I'll talk about how solar cookers are just so important for women's health.
Mhm.
And that were something that was simple and sort of transformative, and was in Sacramento, which of course is sort of like, oh my gosh, how are we going to, doesn't fit. But in fact, there was at the time this little organization called Solar Cookers International. And I found out about them through a friend, and supported them for many years, and then was asked if I would join the board. So I've been on the board for, gosh, 7 or 8 years at this point. And I love to talk about solar cooking, and I got myself a solar cooker and have been solar cooking ever since.
That sounds fantastic. Well, I do want to talk about empowering women. That's important to me too. I want to start with talking about trees, because
Okay.
I know that you have talked about how solar cooking saves trees, and deforestation is a big concern of mine. So how does solar cooking save trees?
Well, so over 2 billion people, that's with a B, cook over an open fire. And one of the biggest sources of fuel are trees. And it takes about only one family. And every time I say this, I think to myself, is this really true? And I double check the facts. One family in 1 year uses a ton of wood. So
Oh,
you can
goodness.
imagine the number of trees that are cut down
Mm.
to fuel the fires that people are using, since man is used since the beginning of time to cook food. And so, in fact, the more than half of the deforestation in sub-Saharan Africa is caused by people cutting down trees for cooking. And you know, as you said, deforestation then leads to massive erosion, degrading waterways, degrading landscapes for agriculture. It's terrible. And then the other biomass that is used is dung. And so what happens with dung is that the dung is taken off of the soil and then used as fuel. And so it can't nurture the soil. So that is another way of degrading the soil so it harms agriculture. But trees, by and large, are the fuel that's used. And so it not only is terrible for deforestation, but it's really dangerous for women. You might have seen pictures of women with huge bundles of wood on the tops of their heads. So it has all kinds of health consequences, and it's dangerous, particularly in terms of sexual violence, as women have to go further and further into the forest to collect the wood, and the farther they are away from the community, the safer, the less safe they are.
Oh, that's interesting. And just back on trees for a moment too. I mean, trees are so important, obviously, for shade. Sub-Saharan Africa, I'm assuming shade is a compelling consideration, but it
Yeah.
also affects the freshwater sources and supplies and all of the things that come with trees, in addition to removing pollutants from the air and all of that. I'm a big fan of trees, so this
Yeah,
is
well, I love trees, and without the trees, then desertification happens.
right.
And here we have a product that you can cook with the free energy of the sun.
Right.
And so it's huge
So,
the huge impact it could have on things like deforestation.
so in what countries are you primarily working right now?
So primarily, I mean, they're actually solar. There are 4 million at this point solar cookers around the world. India is a huge solar cooking country. But we are primarily working in Africa. We spend a lot of time in Kenya and work in a huge refugee camp with 200,000 people called the Kakuma Refugee Camp. And we have a very large pilot project going on there. And then we are currently starting 2 projects funded through the United Nations in Mali and the Central African Republic. And then another big place we have supported solar cooking is in Yemen and also in Tibet.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so
Can you just give us a basic idea? How does it work? I mean, what does this thing look like?
well, that's what's so remarkable about it. Um, all you need is a shiny surface. So the very simplest ones are made of cardboard with aluminum foil on the inside.
I
And
think I made something like that in Girl Scouts.
you probably did. A lot of kids have done it in school and science projects. I mean, they're not super efficient, so you're not going to get, but it works.
Right.
Um, but basically, what you need is sort of a sturdy surface to put the shiny surface in. So a box, for example, solar box cookers are what we use in Kakuma. And they're lined with some kind of metal, tin, aluminum. And then they have a lid that's up that can be pointed towards the sun. So what happens is the sun hits the shiny surface and then goes down into whatever is around the pot. The pots have to be painted black on the outside because they're absorbing that heat. You
Mhm.
also have to keep the pot covered so that it doesn't cool off. So you have, for example, you'll have a lid. Just imagine a box with metal on the inside, a black pot sitting on that, a glass top, and then a lid-like thing that's sticking up like this that's pointing towards the sun, which you can move as the sun moves. And so the light hits that shiny surface, gets directed down into the pot. It's a black pot. So it's a lot like sitting in a car in
Mhm.
black seats with the windows rolled up.
Okay.
And that's how the food cooks.
That's the visual we needed. Yeah.
Right. And it just heats it up. And it cooks relatively fast. I mean, it's not like an oven or a microwave, but I can cook a sweet potato in 45 minutes.
Fantastic.
And so it's the moisture in the food. So
Mhm.
it's, the water molecules, just like in a microwave oven, it's really heated by the movement of water molecules. Same thing, the sun is heating up the water molecules, which cooks the food. Um, and I have never had such delicious sweet potatoes as sweet potatoes cooked by the sun because they're just so creamy. And all you do is you take a sweet potato, you put it in the pot, you put the lid on the pot, you stick it in the solar cooker, and you're good for 45 minutes.
And potatoes, I mean, they take a while to cook even in an oven.
Yeah, even in an oven.
So
So
that's pretty good. Good.
just throw it in there. And you can
Are,
cook all kinds of things. Now, there are all kinds of different solar cookers. There are also ones that are called parabolics that look like exactly like a satellite dish.
mhm.
And then you have a rod that goes through the center, and you can put a frying pan on that. So as you imagine, it's a shiny surface all over. So the sun just hits that shiny surface, goes into the black frying pan, and you can fry up all kinds of things.
Are there any barriers that you encounter when you bring in this new method of cooking to a community?
The biggest barrier is, particularly in refugee communities, is people are so traumatized. They don't really want to learn something new. They just
Right.
want to stick to what they have. So there's
I
sort of
don't want
this.
to learn one more new password, let me tell you.
Exactly. And I know how to cook, and there's comforting cooking in this way that I've cooked and my
Absolutely.
mother cooked, and
Yes.
what is this newfangled thing?
Right.
So we've actually found through our work in refugee camps, people go, oh, well, we can just give them out to people in the refugee camps. And they're like, what? No, I don't want it. Um, so what we have done and works really well is identify sort of informal women leaders in a community,
Mhm.
introduce them to it, and then they're like telling their friends, look, this is amazing. And I don't spend any money on fuel. And so then more and more people sort of look at it, they like it. And then we train the women and they became trainers. And so it takes a couple years before everybody is like, okay, I'm on board. Now, if it's a cloudy day, you can't cook, or it's raining, obviously you can't cook. So you can't use it 100% of the time. But, even 25% of the time is huge savings because you don't have to buy charcoal, you don't have to get wood, you don't have to use dung. And what's so important and such a huge difference between using a solar cooker versus cooking over an open fire is the smoke.
Yes.
Right? And it's mostly women who are cooking, so they're breathing in all of the smoke with all these pollutants in it, has terrible damage to lungs, etc., and particularly young children. And there's no emissions.
Yes.
You cook the food, and the smoke that you're smelling is this lovely smell of food cooking. Um,
It's a huge time saver too, not having to collect all that wood, I'm sure. So
well,
tell
yeah, not only cook, but having to stand there and
right,
tend the fire all
right,
day long, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or if you just do 2 meals
right.
a day, that fire has to be tended to.
Which brings us back to empowering women and uplifting them, giving them some more freedom and control over their lives instead of just being tied to the cooking.
Exactly. And,
cooking.
and time to help their community and their families, or,
And teach other women what and have something that they have to give. Yeah.
exactly. And open small businesses. So they open cafes.
Oh,
There's a woman who's one of our global advisors who has a restaurant in Haiti, and she just uses solar cookers.
fantastic.
And it's amazing. And then we've got a picture in our slide deck of street vendors in Nepal that use another kind of, it's called a solar array, which is just big pieces of metal that are all put together. So it creates this big screen, and then, the sun reflects off the screen and into their pots, and they're selling food on the street using that. So
Fantastic.
it's exciting. And the thing I really think is so important for all your listeners to hear is that often, people come with this Western technology, right? And go, oh, here, we're being so good. And then it breaks down.
Mhm.
This is not something that breaks down. You can make it, and we contract with people in local communities. So it can
Okay.
be made with local supplies, wood, something shiny like metal, glass or plastic. And there you have it.
So
So
these are made from parts in China and shipped to their
no,
local source. That's fantastic.
the ones that we use, and we don't ship them. The ones that we use, we work with a company called Eco Mandate in Nairobi, and they make them. And
And
they make these big boxes. We were having them make these large boxes so 2 families at a time could cook in them. But then families said, we kind of cook at different times. We want our own. And so we just made them in smaller boxes. But there are projects all over the world where the ones I find really exciting are the ones, and we did this in Yemen. We were supporting a couple projects in Yemen where they were training young women to build the solar cookers and then to use the solar cookers
oh, even better. Close
and
that
be
circle.
the
Yeah.
advocates. So there's lots of cool stories. If your readers and listeners if you go to www.solarcooking.org. That gets us to our solar cooker wiki, which is the largest source of information about solar cooking in the world. And what's really fun, and you can spend hours sort of doing deep dives, is you can just click on a country that's listed, and
Uh-huh.
it will have articles about what solar cooking stuff is happening in that country.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's very
I,
fun.
I mean, I could see a use for them even here in Southern California where I live, especially with as more and more climate caused situations arise and power. I mean, we just lost power for several days during the wildfires here in Los Angeles area. And, so then you start scrambling and figuring out, how are we going to eat? We've got these supplies and anyway, I could see that it would be a nice backup thing to have actually
Well,
as
there's actually quite a solar cooking movement here in the US. I mean, we don't spend time in the US because in the US people have resources, but we really want to promote it in those
sure.
countries, in the poorest countries in the world, because, they don't need to be spending, people with hardly a dime to their name don't need to be spending money on fuel. They
No.
just use the sun. And
Yes.
it's not just for cooking food. What's great is other things like solar drying. So you can take fruits and vegetables and you can lay them out and you can make a sort of
Yeah.
a solar oven, if you like, and dry food. And
Oh,
so
nice.
there's a great project, I think it's in Mexico, where it's a whole manufacturing business. They make the solar dryers, they sell the dry food. And
Mm.
so that's exciting. And then the other really important thing about solar cookers is you can pasteurize water.
Oh, I bet that's really, really helpful.
And so
Love
that's,
it. Yeah.
so not only can you cook, but these are all areas where, you don't want to be drinking the water. And so if you use a solar cooker, water is pasteurized. I think it's at 160. Yeah, so water pasteurizes at 65 degrees Celsius, and a simple solar cooker heats up to 82 to 121 degrees. And so you might say, but how do I know the water's ready? So
Right.
one of the people that we work with developed this incredibly simple tool called a solar, I'm blanking on the name. And it's a test tube with wax in it, and
Uh,
and it has a string on the top, and you put the test tube into the water, and when the wax melts, it's
voila.
pressurized. So
Low tech. That's
it's yeah, it's so it's
you're not going to spend all day on the phone trying to reach IT or try to figure out how to watch YouTube videos, trying to figure out how to fix things. Yeah. Low tech is really appealing to
it's
me right now.
I think it's the simplicity of it
Hmm.
is so appealing, and that it has such tremendous ripple effects. It, not only for the people, women in particular, and how it's so much better for women's health, but also for the environment, for the climate. All of the fuel that's burnt obviously releases carbon dioxide. And the fuel that's burnt is the worst kind of carbon that is released. And so I sort of think of it as quite miraculous, really. This is
And for the kids who are clinging to mom and she's cooking and all this,
right.
that pollution and soot in the air, and also they're learning this is what they're growing up with now, and so it'll become the norm for them. So that's
Yeah,
fantastic.
yeah, yeah. We just hired uh, an assistant who's from India, and they grew up with solar cooking.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah. And it doesn't have to just be for families. There's a temple in India. India is using it in a much more industrial scale. So there's a temple in India that has sort of satellite dishes, if you like. They serve 50,000 people a day. And they have these satellite dishes on the roof of their building,
uh-huh.
which then moves towards the sun slowly, like, and they are attached to a huge water drums. And so it heats the water, and then they cook with steam.
Nice.
So yeah, I'd love to go and see it, but
Oh, there's all kinds of possibilities.
amazing, all the sorts of things that you can do with them.
Yes, that's wonderful. Well, how someone who wants to support or get involved with Solar Cookers International, how would they go about that?
Well, definitely go up on our website. So that's www.solarcookers.org. Um, and then, we don't do, as I said, a lot of work here in the States, but, and obviously, first and foremost, our contributions, but we also like people to be able to spread the word. If you're part of a religious community or part of an environmental organization, and you want to spread the word about using solar cookers in your community, or you're supporting, particularly now that USAID is no
Yes.
longer with us, you're saying, how can we support organizations overseas? Um, we're happy to come and talk about and give presentations about solar cookers and how you can sort of spread them around the world. But
That would
our work is really based on, we started off 30 years ago now, making very easy solar cookers called cook kits with cardboard and aluminum foil, and sending them out. And, for a small organization in Sacramento, that was obviously hugely inefficient. And so we changed our model to work mostly through the United Nations
Mhm.
and trying to identify governments that we might work with. And if you can get the governments involved and see this as a way that they can improve the lives of the people in their country, then you have a sustainable funding source, and you're not reliant on some small group in Sacramento, California.
Right.
And so we were one of the first recipients of these new clean technology awards. And we work with countries to help them apply for these awards and then serve as consultants until they can get these projects and programs off the ground. So right now we're working with the Central African Republic and Mali, and we're exploring grants with Togo and a bunch of other countries. And so it's really about now engaging leaders in mostly in African countries and educating them about solar cooking so that then they can take the next step in their country.
Fantastic. Is there anything else you'd like us to know that I didn't ask about?
No, I think I would encourage everyone to solar cook. It's really so easy. You can go up on our website, solar cooking, well, go up on the wiki, solarcooking.org, and you can see they've got everything you want to know about solar cooking and about all the different types of solar cookers. So we don't just help promote solar cooking, we also build capacity of organizations so that they can promote solar cooking. And finally, we do a lot of research to try and improve the effectiveness of solar cooking. And then so that we then rank different solar cookers that are on the market to be able to say, yes, this has been tested by Solar Cooking International, and it meets important solar cooking standards.
Oh, that's great.
You can go up on our website on the wiki and see which solar cookers are great.
Right, that's a lot of information.
And tons of information, and they range in price anywhere from, okay, I make it myself with cardboard and aluminum foil, to $400 for a really big box, and it's very fancy, but boy, it works awesome. And they last forever. And so I encourage people to just try different kinds. It's very fun. It's fun for kids, and it's terrific for the environment.
I'm sold. Works for me. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you so much for chatting with me today. And I will include those links in the show notes.
Super. Thank you so much for having us. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Sure. I was glad to be able to feature in the book.
Well, we appreciate it.
And if you enjoyed this conversation today, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you'd like to hear from more community change makers. You can also read about many more inspiring groups in my book, Madness on the Brink of Eco-Apocalypse. Finally, if you have a group you'd like to recommend for this conversation series, be sure to email me. We want to give a voice to all who are caring for people, plants, and critters because, again, we can't wait for the government, the megacorps, or the oligarchs to do it for us. We are here, literally, to save ourselves.